politician, but before that, he was a soldier. He served in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. He became an MP in 1992 and has forever been a brave, long-standing Eurosceptic. He became leader of the Conservative Party. And then, when he finished that, he fought for one of his deepest passions, tackling poverty. And he set up a think tank, the Centre for Social Justice, that he still chairs and runs, and that does incredible work and research to help reduce poverty in this country. When Mr. Cameron was appointed Prime Minister, our next speaker was then appointed Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. And he carried out that role until he felt compelled, on a matter of principle, to resign because of what George Osborne was doing with austerity. That is a courageous politician who will resign from cabinet on principle, ladies and gentlemen. He's campaigned tirelessly for Brexit. He still is doing so. Before we welcome Iain Duncan Smith to the stage, let's just see him in action on the video.
I'm tired of being told that this was some sort of disaster or some accident. I genuinely and passionately believe when I campaign to leave that this country will do incredibly well, whatever the arrangements are. We have to leave because the British people have said we should leave. The idea that we can suddenly give way on some of our core red line issues has to be told to the EU straight away. That's not going to happen. They're taking the liquid from us rather quickly. Okay. I just wish many more in this House would stand up for those who voted to leave genuinely, not stupidly, not because they hated people, but because they wanted something to change. They wanted to take back control of their country, and that's what I want to do.
Please welcome to the stage
Iain Duncan Smith, MP.
Richard, Rocco, Kate, thank you very much, all of you here. I have some scribbled notes. I have no idea what they are. I wrote them at the back and I can't read them now, so forgive me if I think I've come to a Remain rally after... Frankly, that's what you would get if you held a Remain rally. He couldn't even remain. Anyway... Can I tell you, it's a real privilege to be here tonight. All of the list of speakers, absolutely my great friend Esther, who's fantastic, you're yet to hear from her, Tim and everybody else that I've mentioned. But the one person I want to talk about, just for about 20 seconds, is my hero, Kate. When people talk about courage, when people talk about standing firm, when people talk about defying those that you believe to be wrong and standing up for your principles, it is indeed for me an enormous privilege, Kate, to be in the same hall as you. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I must start by telling you something about why I really voted to leave, and then I'll get on to the serious stuff. I was asked a few years ago on behalf of the Prime Minister to attend a conference in Berlin. I know what you're thinking. DWP, work and pensions, you get everywhere. Now listen, I went to Berlin to stand in for the Prime Minister. Well, I had been leader of the party at some point. I know, I try and forget about it as well. But the main point is that I got in there and I learned something, because I never used to go to those halls at all, but I learned what committees and things like that are like in the EU. And I first of all started in the morning with all the people that were like me, and I sat in this huge horseshoe table and had earphones on and everything else. And I found that everybody else there, the level of the people like me, all had about 5 people behind them. Well, of course, I'd come over with nobody because of austerity, and I didn't want to pay for the air ticket for anybody else while I was at it. So the Foreign Office was so worried about how it looked, I ended up with a waiter being dragooned in to sit behind me. And, well, everybody passed notes up and down, and so did he, but his were menus. I like to think that in that couple of minutes I achieved more for Europe than anybody else, which is not deciding absolutely anything. Anyway, I then went to become the Prime Minister, you know, as I say, was leader once. Anyway, the point is that I sat, and there's these 3 horseshoe tables in Mrs. Merkel's great place, and an inner, and then there's an inner, and an outer. And I'm Prime Minister, well, that is to say, I am Prime Minister now, although I'm still Secretary of State. That is all those Prime Minister and Secretary of State, but Secretary of State and Prime Minister, but not to be confused with the two. But anyway, I'm now sitting on the inner of the inner, and then there's an outer, and the inner where the heads of government are, you know, a select band, and there's a translating booth in the corner and headphones on. As I sit down, the President of Cyprus sits down next to me, and I tell you, this is a man worth voting for, because he went to sleep straight away. He didn't even bother to wake up. I mean, really, that's serious politics in my book. But anyway, Mrs. Merkel starts, and off she goes, said she'll speak briefly, and after about half an hour, she hands over to, that time, Monsieur Hollande. Do you remember him? He's quite short. Actually, do you know, suddenly, I think also, isn't Monsieur Macron quite short? I don't, anyway, it's not going to get, it may be a lack of good British beef, but anyway, the point is that, to finish it off, as we were going around, everybody said how wonderful things were everywhere in Europe, and I realized that this was what this was all about. And finally it came to me after about an hour, and Mrs. Merkel said to me, "Herr Iain." I know, I did feel a bit taller. "Herr Iain, would you like to speak?" And I said, "Indeed, Mrs. Merkel, I think you've a huge privilege. Thank you so much indeed." And I thought to myself, what do? I'm British, and I'm abroad. You know, and I'm at work and pension. I don't get to go abroad a lot, but I'm abroad, and British people who are abroad, they always tell a self-deprecating joke, don't they? I don't think the Germans would, but I thought, well, I'll start with something. And I said, "Mrs. Merkel, a huge privilege, and I'm going to be brief, because just like the rest of you, I've sat here for an hour, and I've now lost the will to live." I wasn't greeted with that at all, actually, funnily enough. Stony silence, rather sad, actually, I thought. And anyway, I quickly told them how wonderful things were and realized I'll never come abroad again. The headmaster, when I get back, will cane me or something, and I'll be in trouble in detention like I always was at school. Anyway, I kind of sat back in the seat and listened to the gentle snoring of the man on my right, and this went on round. And after about another 40 minutes, it all ended, and we were going for the photograph. And as we're going out, I think it was the RST who said to me, I won't use his exact words because some of them are quite Anglo-Saxon. He said, "You're a ... funny man." I said, why am I so funny? He said, "Oh, you don't know how funny you are." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because I speak enough French and I could hear the translation in the booth. And when you said you'd lost the will to live, they translated as you were terminally ill." So when people say, "Why did you vote to leave?" the answer is very simple. I can't go back there because they think I'm dead. But the whole reality that we face right now, ever since before we started on the referendum, is this enormous establishment plot to tell us that we are a miserable little nation, we're incapable of doing anything, and that we must fear the future. That is what they tell us day in, day out. Apparently, when we leave the European Union, we will never be able to fly anywhere ever again. We won't be able to go by sea because all the ferries will be stacked up, queued across the way. You could actually walk across them, apparently, according to this. So at least that's one bonus. If you get stuck halfway across, you won't survive because there are no medicines, and so it'll be back to home cures. Homeopathy will become the thing in the UK because we can't get anything to help us recover. I really hope some of those who spout this nonsense actually do find that problem exactly exists. But I must tell you, there will be no food either, which means that we won't even make it to the boats to walk across because we'll all be dead by that stage. And finally, we simply will give up because Britain has always been a poor, useless little island on the north of a great continent. What a lot of rubbish! I ask a simple question. What has happened to the British establishment that they no longer believe in their country, so that they fear more than they care about, and they lose it at the drop of a hat when it comes to what matters? My father would turn in his grave. His generation fought to save this country. A man that had 5 gallantry medals, that put his life on the line almost every day of the war, just like many of his friends. He said, "I didn't fight against people, I fought for people. I fought for the great British people and the wonderful freedoms and things that they have given to the world, and I would do it again," he said. And the one thing that he taught me, most of all, is that why I'm in this business, why I'm in politics, is because I love this country. It's what gets me up in the morning. But you cannot love your country and then throw it away so that somebody else governs it. That has been our problem for 40 years. Successions of the establishment who have run this place have told us endlessly that this was only about a marketplace. Only in the UK do we have this ludicrous debate that this is all about markets, it's all about trading, and it's all about business. It is not. The people that designed this project, like a man you've never heard of called Altiero Spinelli, they believed that they must eradicate the nation state because they believed that competing nation states were always going to end at war. And I can understand why in the Depression and into the Second World War, many of them felt like that. But I don't. I don't believe that at all. I believe competing nation states in democracies with strong democratic institutions are a force for good. Competition makes us better. Our experience in the run to the war was different from many of them. We had strong democratic institutions, the same in America and many around the world. So when people got angry about the problems they had, and quite rightly too, about their loss of jobs and their miserable conditions, they vented it against politicians, took them out and got new governments. They didn't tear the system down and ask unelected oligarchs to run them because they would somehow know better. They believed in the concept of freedom and democracy, and we survived as a result. And that is the point. The point is, this is a political project that we have never fully been told the truth about. And now we have chosen to leave it. In 2016, as I walked out of the offices into the early morning mist, seeing the sun rise over the east, I thought this was the greatest day of my life. But you know, I never thought I would have to fight quite so hard to do what the British people asked us to do. I come hot foot from a building across the way, which, strangely enough, doesn't represent the British people anymore. On this subject, the vast majority of those in the Parliament, in the House of Commons, and also particularly in the House of Lords, are genuinely Remainers. They do not believe that the British people really could have got it right in 2016. And they've used every mechanism, every delay, every possibility to try and thwart what the British people voted for in 2016. It is a fight. It is a daily fight. It is a fight to remind them that the people that they thwart are the very people that put us in that place. It is a privilege. It is a privilege to be a member of Parliament. It is a deep privilege, and I am conscious of that every single day. But it is a greater privilege to recognize that when the British people give you an instruction, it is your duty to make that instruction reality. And I say to those who want to thwart this, you think that Britain, the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland, and I want to say that again, the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland, too many of you, I say, you think we're just a little place that doesn't matter. We have no bearing. Well, I ask the simple question. If you took the United Kingdom out of the world, what would you lose? You wouldn't lose a piece of land. You wouldn't lose a thing stuck on the end of Europe. This is the country that gave the world the concept of parliamentary democracy and freedom. This is the country that gave the world the right to own property as an inalienable right that no kings, no princes, and no despots could ever take away from you. The rule of law, the free market that governs the whole of the world and how we trade, including the concept of the WTO, and we like the WTO, don't we? And if you're not persuaded by that, just about every sport that you play was probably designed on playing fields inside this country, even though we don't win any of them anymore. So I have a very simple message. I love this country dearly. I love it with all my heart. I love people, whether they're Remainers or Leavers, I don't care. But I know one thing. This country's greatness lies ahead of it. And we have an opportunity and a duty to deliver it. I pledge to you tonight, I will not sleep. I will not rest. I will not wake to find a Britain that is otherwise than independent and free once again. Thank you.